Welcome, everyone. I'm going to be zipping through a lot of information over the next half hour or so. And I'm going to talk about, debt, how much it costs to go to school. We're going to talk about the free stuff. Then we're going to talk about OSAP, and then we'll give you some contact information. But again, you can go to the Q&A room for the financial aid folks. And when you go to their page on the open house website, they even have a nice video that they've put together that you can watch as well, that has just even more, some more information in addition to what I'm going to be talking to you about. So right off the bat, we are going to start off with student debt and how much it costs to actually go to school. Across Canada, there's some of the data that I was finding said that more than half of students who earn a bachelor's degree leave school with at least an average debt of 28,000. Usually it's around 27 to 28. And I mean, that is a lot of money. And I have a daughter. I'm a single mom, and I have a daughter who just finished school. And it's funny that her OSAP debt at the loan at the end of her 4 years was about that much money. So that's an average kid doing an average program. So it's pretty accurate in terms of my perspective. But just remember, depending on the program that you do, there's some programs that cost more to do, so that might include a little bit more debt. So generally in Ontario, we're broken down into these different categories. So to do a bachelor's degree, either at college or university, because remember, colleges have been offering degree programs since 2003. The average is about 6,500. The average certificate diploma at college is about 2,700. Now, when I was getting these numbers from the OSAP 8 estimator, they did have private career college come up at 10,000. I know nothing about them, but I thought I'd throw it up on the screen just because OSAP included it. So these are pretty much your costs that you're looking at. But then there's fees and supplies, which includes textbooks, some programs, like if you're doing the culinary programs at George Brown, you're going to have to buy textbooks, uniforms, and knife kits, safety shoes on top of that. So some programs have very little supplies that you're going to have to purchase, whereas other programs might have costlier equipment that you need to do your program. And then there's the living expenses. So live at home, you're usually going to save money because hopefully you're going to be eating for free and not paying rent when you're at home. But of course, students that tend to move away from home, like my daughter did, then the cost of living goes up a little bit. And again, just to show you this is a list of fees at George Brown in different programs. Because remember, the average is about 2,700. Because again, I've been a recruiter for 16 years, and I often have to debunk the myth that college is cheaper than university. Right? I'm sure Robin as well. Like we sometimes have to go in and do presentations to grade 10 career studies classes. And I remember asking a class saying, which is better, college or university? And of course, a lot of the hands go up for university. And when I asked them why, sometimes one of the answers would be, well, it costs more, therefore it must be better. And I'm like, well, you can't use cost because as you can see here, there are some college programs that by nature of what they teach and the equipment and the labs are very expensive. So again, yeah, dental hygiene, denturism, that's not a typo. Those costs are per year for tuition and fees, and it's a 3-year program. So times that by 3, folks. So again, it's not where you go, it's what you study that will increase the cost, right? Dental programs always cost more than any other program, even at university. Like dental school costs a little bit more than med school because of all the equipment and the labs and all that stuff. In terms of what's available for students, hopefully you've heard these terms before. Scholarships are usually based on academic merit. A lot of high school students may receive an offer of money with their offer of admission, whereas bursaries and grants are based mostly on financial need, although some may have academic requirements as well. And then there's things called awards, which can combine a lot of different criteria and may also be in the format of a contest. And then there's loans, which you can get through a bank or you can get through an OSAP. And which is better? Again, it depends on what's best for you. Getting the money is easy. It's the paying back the money that sometimes makes it a little more difficult. And just to illustrate how many students pursue the different types of financial aid available, last year, George Brown gave away about $8 million in the free stuff. Almost double that many students are relying on OSAP grants and loans. And I also want to make it very clear that you can be in both categories because my daughter received OSAP every year that she went to school, but she also received bursaries every year because she did a separate application for them. So just be prepared that if you need money, you may have to look for and apply to more than one source. So now we're going to quickly talk about the free stuff. I love that word. That's my favorite word in the English language, right? um, Awards have different criteria. I mean, every college and university has money for you, but the amounts that we give out, what you have to attain to receive the money can be very, very different. There's no rule that colleges and universities have to follow. So every school does it the way they want. So we may be looking for academic achievement, maybe volunteer leadership experience, maybe you're going to tell us how you overcame, tell us a story about how you overcame some obstacles in your life, or you're going to have to illustrate that there's financial need. All right. So there's lots of different stuff available. And then depending on when you start, will also dictate when you apply for awards, because unlike university, usually most university undergrad programs only start in September. And again, the degree programs at George Brown only start in September, but some of our programs, like the practical nursing diploma, that has a start date in September, January, and May. So again, depending on when you're planning to start at college, there'll be different deadlines and different dates to which the applications begin. And a lot of that stuff is available on our website. We have a student portal called StuView, right? So for those of you who have already been accepted and you've confirmed your offer, remember, as soon as you apply, George Brown sends you an ID number. And then eventually, once you get accepted and confirm and start to register, you're going to go into StuView and sort of create your little account. You're say, I'm a George Brown student. Here's my student ID number, and you're going to create a password. And that's where you're going to register for your program. So they may say, hey, business students, on July 12th, that's the date you can go in and create your timetables. And that's where you're going to pay fees and see your courses, see your grades. But that's also where you can apply to student awards at George Brown. There's also information on our website. So if you just went to georgebrown.ca and you can just type in financial aid, but you'll see that there's a drop down menu. And then from financial aid, we have information on awards and scholarships. There's a page just about OSAP, the work study program, which is where you can work while you're going to school. I did that when I was a George Brown student. We have a step-by-step guide to paying for college. And then we have our contact information for the financial aid folks as well. So this is where, if you click on the types of awards, this is how we categorize all the awards at George Brown. So you'll see there's college-wide, divisional, external. Mio, who asked about international, there's a page just for international student awards, right? Even alumni, isn't that funny? Even after you graduate from George Brown, you can still win some money. So we don't have time to go through every single category, but I'm going to go through a couple just to give you an example. So college-wide, you click there and it's going to give you a bunch of awards that it doesn't matter what program you're doing at George Brown, but there are subcategories. So maybe you're the first person in your family to go to college, you could apply for the first generation scholarship. Maybe you did a dual credit while you were in high school. Maybe you identify as Indigenous. So remember, doesn't have anything to do with your program, but there's subcategories that you have to match. Then you can go look at divisional awards. These are the ones that are linked to your program. So there's awards just for business students or just for design students. There was even one that was for female students going into construction and engineering programs, because we're trying to get more female representation in some of those sectors. So there really is money for everyone out there. You just have to spend the time finding them and then apply to them. Then the last category I'm going to go through is just the external awards. So these awards are offered by outside organizations, and they're not necessarily just for George Brown. You would probably find these on any college or university website because they're given to anybody going anywhere. But again, subcategories, and these are just a small sampling of what I listed. I didn't list all of them. So it's going to take you a chunk of time just to go through and read them and say, ooh, does that one sound like me? Oh, no, this one doesn't sound like me. Oh, this one sounds like me. So again, taking the time to review what's out there. And remember, you can apply to as many as you fit the criteria for. All right. Then you can also search unions and associations that also might be a networking opportunity for you. And as an example, Robin and I both belong to OPSU, the Ontario Public Service Employees Union, because we work at a college. I know that OPSU, I went in and checked, and they have about 9 scholarships available. And again, depending on the association or the union, sometimes you have to be related to the person, the union member. Sometimes you don't. Like there's one in there that just says you just have to be applying to one of the publicly funded colleges in Ontario. That was it. And then they have some other things you have to maybe write an essay, right? So again, there's lots of opportunities. Maybe ask your parents, a family member where they work, because some associations and companies might have it, but you're not aware because you've never asked for it. So again, networking, just asking and doing a little bit of research into that. Students with exceptionalities or accessibility needs, remember, we want to support students with disabilities, but they should be registering with their college or university accessible learning or disability service office to receive accommodations. So for example, if you have an IEP from your high school, that does not automatically come to us. You have to self-identify and submit the documentation like medical forms, psychoeducational assessments to get accommodations, because we want to support you academically, but you may also be eligible for awards and scholarships. So for example, the one on the top list there, disabilityawards.ca, that was actually created by the people below, the National Educational Association of Disabled Students, to help post-secondary students search hundreds of scholarships available across Canada, specifically for students with disabilities. And each college or university may also have funds set aside for students with disabilities. So you got to reach out to us. There's some fun ways that you can win money for college or university, including this one, which is one of my absolute favorites. It's the Stuck at Prom Scholarship Contest, which is sponsored by the company Duck Brand, who make duct tape. Every year, they invite young people to make an outfit using nothing but tape. Can you imagine that? Last year, because of the pandemic, they knew that students were not physically attending prom, but they can still design and make an outfit and post a picture to their website to enter the contest. Like, look how fun. And these were the last year's top winners. They have different categories and different amounts, but look at this. They each won $10,000 just for making a dress or a suit out of tape. Like, talk about creative. So if you're interested, you can go onto their website and read about the contest, which opens up, it actually opened up on April 1st, no fooling. And it usually closes in July. So you have plenty of time to go see if this is one that you want to do. DoSomething.org is the largest not-for-profit exclusively for young people. They can join, volunteer for social change and civic action campaigns to make a real-world impact on causes they care about. And in doing so, they qualify for easy scholarships. So no GPA, no essay or recommendations required. So again, that's another opportunity for you just to go in, poke around. I think they had one of the campaigns that they were running was making masks for the pandemic. So, this is what an example where doing good really pays off. You can use crowdfunding sources like GoFundMe to raise money for school. And this is a really great story about Tony Morgan, who is actually from the GTA, who, apart from overcoming some major obstacles in her life, ended up getting accepted to Harvard University. Imagine that. At one point, she was homeless, and now was in Harvard, and then went to Harvard. Like, if that doesn't tell you that anything is possible if you're willing to work for it, I don't know what does. And her friends and family started a GoFundMe campaign to help raise money for school, and they almost doubled their goal. So it's just about thinking outside of the box. Maybe you only need $2,000 to help pay for first year. So go create a little GoFundMe account. Say, hey, I need to raise $2,000, and you can get your friends and family to donate. Right? Like you can see here, anonymous donated $10, but look, someone named Arlene was given $25 a month. Like, when you say I need $2,000, people are like, oh, that's a lot. But if people give you a little bit every month, it can really pay off. You can use this website, Higher Ed Points, where you can convert loyalty points. So you register and create an account, and then you ask your friends and family to donate their loyalty points like Aeroplan, American Express, CIBC, and TD, and then you can convert them into cash that can be used on campus. They also have a crowdfunding as part of their website. So it's Canada's first educational cash and loyalty point crowdfunding scholarship. So instead of people donating money, they donate their points to you. And again, you can use it on campus. There's award and scholarship websites like this one, ontarioscholarships.ca. There's one called Scholar Tree, Wyconic. We're going to give you a list at the end that'll list all of these. They collect opportunities onto one website to make it easier for you to find. Now, some of them you just search, they just list them. Others, like Wyconic, you actually create a little profile and they use filters to help match you up. So, I mean, again, a little bit time consuming sometimes, but remember, our job today is just to give you all the options available to help you find your sources of information. Helpful tips: start early, get your profiles, cover letters. But this is almost like applying for a job. If you were creating a portfolio and a resume to start applying for jobs, it's almost the same thing. First, you're doing your research and seeing what's out there, and then you have to collect what you need. You might need a reference letter. You might need to show that you did some volunteer hours. Maybe you have to do one of those, in 500 words or less, tell us why you need this money kind of essay. So it's important to make sure that you're submitting what they're asking you to, and you want to do it by the deadline. They say that you should set aside 1 to 2 hours per week just to make sure that you stay on top of it. Now, you can reuse the same, sometimes you can reuse the same letter, but please make sure that you change the name of the award or the person's name, because it's a little awkward, because if they see that you just did a copy paste, you didn't check I'm applying for the Samson and Delilah award, and then you don't change it for the next award. Proofread. So remember, proofread, make sure you don't have any spelling or grammatical errors. Give it to someone else to read to check. And the last bullet is the most important one, is apply for as many opportunities as you can. A lot of students think that they don't have enough volunteer hours, or they don't play sports, or their average isn't high enough, because a lot of people think, oh, you have to have a 95 average to get money for school. And that's just not true. Every year I hear stories about colleges and universities having unclaimed awards, or that we've had friends who work at other colleges who say, yeah, there was a student who won an award because they were the only ones who applied. Or sometimes they applied to one that was not necessarily for them, but they still got it because nobody else applied. And I just want to share a letter that I got with a mom who attended one of my workshops. Remember, before the pandemic, Robin and I used to do these presentations in person at schools. And a mom and a daughter I did an evening presentation at a high school. And the mom sent me an email saying, hey, we attended your workshop, and when they got home, the daughter was like, well, I don't know, I'm not good enough, I don't have enough of this, enough of that. And the mom said, remember what Liz said, just apply. And as you can see, she applied for a bunch, some win, some big, some small, and she won over $20,000, because the more you apply, you increase your odds of winning. It's like the lottery, right? The more tickets you buy, it increases your chance of winning. But this, you don't even spend money. All you have to do is spend time filling out the application. So, and I get emails like this saying, hey, I won 5,000 or 1,500. Anytime anybody wins money, they get excited. So the last message is, please apply, apply, apply. Now we're going to quickly shift over to talk about this stuff, OSAP, and just touch upon what you can get from a bank as well. Hopefully you're familiar with OSAP. It's the Ontario Student Assistance Program. It's made up of money that's funded by the federal and provincial governments. The larger portion is federal, the smaller portion is provincial. And tip number one, then they take all this money and they combine it to give you a combination of grants and loans. So grants is the free stuff. It's non-repayable that you keep. And then the loan portion they give you, it remains interest-free until you're finished school, and then you have to pay it back with interest. Tip number one is you can actually decline the loan. I don't know how many students can actually decline the loan, because my kid couldn't. She needed to take all the money that OSAP gave her. But if for some reason, maybe you've applied for a lot of the free stuff and you only need a little bit, you can actually just take the grant money. Then you owe nothing back with interest later on. Who can apply for OSAP? Basically available to Ontario residents. And again, I have a little asterisk beside Ontario residents, because if you're coming, let's say you're from BC and you're coming to George Brown, you actually have to live in Ontario, not as a student, for 12 consecutive months before you can be eligible for the Ontario portion. So you can apply to OSAP, but you might only get the federal not the provincial. And then you have to meet the citizenship. So, Canadian citizens, PR, protected person. You have to be enrolled in an OSAP approved school and program. And I'm going to guess that maybe 99% of them are, but I know George Brown has a couple of programs that are not OSAP eligible, and they're like $10,000 each. So just a word of warning that sometimes your program may not be eligible, but most of them are. You have to be enrolled in at least 60% of your full course load, 40% if you're a student with a permanent disability, because they get to take less because then it's enables them to be a little more successful. And that's the key thing. You have to be taking a full course load. So a reminder, if you are an OSAP student, because what happens is sometimes students start at George Brown, they're like, I'm so excited. And then they're like, whoa, I have like 8 courses this semester. That's too much, which is cool. But don't drop anything until, like, if you're thinking of dropping a couple, just please check with the financial aid office and say, hey, I'm thinking about dropping these 2 specific courses, and they'll tell you to make sure that you haven't dropped to put you into part-time, because that'll affect your funding, right? So you want to always maintain 60% of your course load. And it's not necessarily 60% of your courses, because remember, different courses are weighted differently. Some are more hours than others. So always check with them before you drop. And then you have to maintain satisfactory academic progress. So if you don't pass the semester 2, obviously you're not going to get money for semester 2. Or if you don't pass from year 1 to year 2, it's like Monopoly. Remember, do not pass go, do not collect $200. Well, it's the same thing with that. The way that OSAP is calculated is they look at your educational costs. So some of the stuff that we covered in the beginning, remember, some programs cost more than others. So tuition, books, fees, supplies, etc. And then your living expenses. They're going to say, where are you going to live while you're going to school? Live at home, you're going to get less. Live away from home, you're going to get more. Usually that's the way it works. But also the farther away your school is from your home also affects it, because maybe you're going to live at home, but now you're coming to George Brown, and now you're going to have to take a GO train because maybe you live in Oshawa and you're coming to George Brown. Well, now they're going to factor in, oh, you're from really far away, but you're going to live at home. Well, you can get a little bit more money to help pay for the cost of transportation. Then they deduct your financial resources. So the student is expected to contribute. The magic number is $3,600 per year. So they expect you to work every summer. And some students have to work during the academic year, like my kid did, to help make ends meet. And then, students have to have their parents on the application. You actually have to be out of high school for 6 years before you can apply independently with no parents on your application, unless you're a Crown ward or there's extenuating circumstances where, there's a breakdown of the family unit and then the parents are not on the application, but that requires extra paperwork. And then if it's an older student who's maybe, with kids, then your spouse, if you have one, is counted. So once they deduct that from your educational costs, what's left over, that's what's used to calculate your financial need. Now, if you do happen to be going into one of those high cost programs like dental hygiene, remember when I showed you the dental hygiene program at the beginning? Wow, OSAP is like, well, we don't really care. We didn't tell you to take that high cost program, because there's a limit to how much OSAP you can get. But there is something called the Student Access Guarantee to help kick in and pay for those high cost programs. So it's done automatically. If you are applying to OSAP, you will automatically be considered to see if you qualify for the Student Access Guarantee. So it's not an additional application they have to do. It's done automatically. The way that the division of the grant and loan, I've run the cycle through a couple times for you, the OSAP 8 estimator, just so you can see it's based on family income. So I started, you can see across the bottom, 50,000, and then in increments going up to 145. The blue stuff is the grant, the free stuff. The green stuff is the loan. And as you can see, the more family income, the less money you get. So the free stuff decreases to 0, and even the loan portion will decrease. I mean, that's the way it should work. The more money the parents make, the less government help they need. The way that they calculate how much money the parents have is basically looking at your Canadian pension plan contributions, your employment insurance premiums, and your total tax payable. So there's 3 lines off of your notice of assessment, your income tax return, that you will have to submit for your family member who's applying, right? There's lifetime limits on how much OSAP you can get, which is basically 340 weeks. Students in doctoral programs, if you're doing a PhD, it goes up to 400, and a student with a disability goes up to 520, because as we discussed earlier, you only need to be taking 40% of your course load when you're registered with a permanent disability. So it might take a student 5 years to do their program instead of 3 or 4. Now, OSAP has not gone live yet, so I'm assuming that everybody here is starting in September. So I'm using that as my example. So OSAP is not live yet for September start. There's an application right now, but that's for students who are starting programs in the spring, in May. September, it doesn't go live until usually the last week of April or the first week of May. But so if you go onto their website right now, you can't you can't do your application, but you can register, because remember, you got to get yourself into the system first, and you can do the OSAP aid estimator as a sample to see how much might I get. So if you were to click on the OSAP aid estimator right now, it takes you to this page. And if you try to put September 2021, you're going to get this pink line that says wah wah, not available, come back in the spring. So just for just show you an example, and if you want to do a sample today, just go back and roll it back to 2020. There's not going to be a whole lot of difference between last year and this year. So I'm showing you, I went back and put September 2020, and then I ran it through twice. So just to show you, a student taking kinesiology at Queens, I put that because that's where my daughter went and what she studied. So parental income of 65, no student assets. If the student was living at home, this is how much they would get. A total of $9,400. So then I went back and did it all the same, except living away from home. And you can see it's bumped up to 16,000. So living away from home, you get more money, and as it should, because remember, you're going to pay more, right? So you can also link your OCAS or OUAC account. So basically OCAS, if you've applied to college, you know how you apply through Ontario College Application Services. That's the place that does your college applications. You can actually go in and link your Ontario College account here, because then OSAP will know what programs you applied to at all the different colleges that you applied to. You don't have to do this, but you can if you want to. And then they start pulling in the costs of the different programs. Oh, you applied for business, this is how much you might get, like your OSAP aid estimator thing. But you don't have to do that. You can just enter in your information when you're ready to apply. Also, first-time users will also have to complete the new self-study module on the OSAP website about financial literacy. So you're going to read some information about how OSAP works, the roles and responsibilities of receiving financial aid, as well as information on budgeting and debt. And then you have to answer each question before you can move on to the next session. And then when you answer everything, you'll say, ta-da, session complete. Now you can do your application. When the application cycle does go live, it's basically going to go, then you can go back onto the site, click on login, and there's basically 4 sections that you have to walk through. So I'm going to quickly give you a timeline based on a student starting in September, and they're doing a 4-year program. So goes live, this is all the information that you have to submit: date of birth, social insurance number, income tax return, the student's most recent pay statement showing year to date, the last date you attend high school, your college or university number, and your online banking information, which they're going to use to deposit your funds, and also what they're going to use to withdraw the money when you're getting ready to pay. Just so you know, number 1 and 2 is also going to be counted for the parents that are on the application. Everything else is only the student. In terms of parents, basically your parents are married, remarried in common law, both parents' information is required. If your parents are divorced, separated, widowed, or single, so if your parents are divorced, and the one that has the primary custody, the one that you spend the most time currently live with, that's the one that's on the application. If it's like shared custody and you sort of flip-flop between either parent, then you can choose which one. And if a parent is remarried or in a new common law relationship, that you also have to have the step parents' information and income as well. So you do your application, you get approved, then your money is split into 2 portions. You get 60% of it in September to pay for semester 1. The remaining portion will come in January to pay for semester 2. They send what you owe directly to us first, and then you will get the balance deposited into your account. You have to reapply for OSAP every year if you need it, and then every year you get that 60-40 split. Fast forward to the day you graduate, they give you a 6-month no payment grace period. So it's kind of like Leon's don't pay a cent events. For 6 months, they expect you to find a job. You don't have to make payments, but during that time, you will probably be accruing interest on part of it. So it used to be the federal, and as of today, it's the provincial portion. But again, they've made some announcements. Something came out the other day that they're saying that they were clawing back some of the interest because of the pandemic. So again, that's what it's like today. But remember, in 2, 3, 4 years, this might change depending on what government's in place and how things are doing, right? Um, and if you do plan to do another program, just remember that as long as you're full-time in your second program, your first loan remains interest-free and on hold. And that's key. It has to be full-time, because if you're doing part-time studies, that doesn't count. Like you're expected to pay back your loan after 6 months if you're not in school full-time. And then the day your 6-month period is up, like they're like, surprise, we're going to start deducting money from you. As my daughter found out one day, she texted me and said, oh, $350 just went missing from my bank account. And it was her OSAP payment that was already withdrawn, and she wasn't paying attention. They do have a repayment calculator on their page, which sort of like breaks down, like as of today, it's 2.75, because there's different rates on the federal portion versus the provincial. So again, in 2, 3, 4 years, we don't know what that interest rate is going to be like, because it's based on the prime, and then they have different rates. But they do have a repayment calculator that you can at least go get an estimate of how much will my monthly payments be. So you just have an idea of that. Please visit the National Student Loan Service Center. This is the website. So OSAP are the people who give you the money. These are the people who collect the money. So please go in and read about them, because they have great information on managing your money, managing your loan, and repaying your loan. So I find that the more information you have up front, the better off you're going to be. And then also talk to your bank, right? There's a lot of student loans, student lines of credit that are available instead of doing the OSAP route. Like I'm a customer of Bank of Montreal, and I just went onto my bank's website and I saw, oh, look, they have a student line of credit for your undergrad, professional studies if you're planning to do an MBA or something. And then if you're going to med school or dental school, God help you, but there's money that you can get for that as well. Tips for the OSAP: apply as soon as it goes live. So your application must be submitted 60 days before the end of your study period. Oh my God, I put it, there's a typo there, Robin. I'm mortified. So as soon as it goes live, start your application. My daughter does it as soon as it goes live, and within 3 weeks, she would be approved, and she knew how much she was getting. So it kind of relieves, oh my gosh, how much am I going to get? Remember to remain in good academic standing. Manage your money wisely. Like this is a good time to start looking and paying attention to how much things cost, especially for young people. The whole goal is to maybe move out of your parents' house one day. We have to make sure that you're going to be okay financially. So this is a good time to start adulting. Keep an eye on those interest rates. I've had friends whose kids were older than mine, and they said, listen, when my kid got ready to graduate, we looked at the interest rate for OSAP, and then we looked at a bank. And if the bank had a better interest rate than OSAP, they got a bank loan. Maybe you have to co-sign for your son or daughter or family member, but then they use the bank loan to pay off OSAP, and then they just pay off the bank loan. So remember, getting the money is easy. It's the paying back. The better the interest rate, the better you're going to be, right? And if you still don't have enough money, please reach out to your college or university, because we have financial bursaries. We have ways of helping you to get money. Like again, my kid had to work all through school to make ends meet. 53% of students report that they have to work while they're going to school. And I imagine that with the pandemic, families have been affected. People have lost jobs. So students may have to work a little bit more than they maybe did, because maybe there's not as much money in the family. So every school has work, and please, try to work every summer if you can. Every little bit helps to keep that financial aid, financial debt load down. In terms of contact information, if you are planning to attend George Brown, remember the financial aid folks have their own Q&A room that we want to send you to go ask all your questions, because they are the experts, and they have private ways of chatting with you. Because if you want to say something, you don't want to give out too much information in a public forum, but you can private message them. Or I think they have like maybe a breakout room that they can go with you to talk privately. But please send your questions to them, finaid@georgebrown.ca. And if you have any questions about George Brown or college in general, you can send them to us. And our email is student.recruitment@georgebrown.ca. And here you go. Here's the screenshot. If you want, you can do a screenshot, or if you do happen to have a smartphone handy, if you point your smartphone at that QR code, it'll open up in Dropbox and you can download a copy of this presentation. And I have some other FAQ documents about OSAP that might help you. If you have questions, please feel free to ask them here. How does it work for mature students where living at home means living at the place where I buy my own food and pay my? Again, you have to be, once you've been out, this is for Shannon, if you've been out of high school for 6 years, you can apply as an independent student. That's the way they changed it a couple of years ago. So if you're out of high school for 6 years, you can apply independently. Your parents don't have to be on your application. Can you apply for OSAP if you're doing a part-time program? Yes, you can, but that's part-time. This presentation was based on full-time only. What does meaning living away from home? How much is the difference? Again, if remember, living away from home means you usually get more money, but remember, it depends on the financial aid, how much money the family has. So morale, if a parent makes a lot of money, then even if you're going away from home, you're not going to get a lot, right? It's based on financial need. So you have to report how much money is in that family. Is the session being recorded for future viewing? Yes, it is. Oh, Robin already answered that one. Okay. What if someone is independent from the family? Again, I answered that one. You have to be out of high school for 6 years to be applying as an independent. Or like I said, sometimes you have to have like an affidavit, a notarized letter from someone saying this student, something happened, a breakdown of the family unit. They don't rely on their parents. So there's usually some paperwork involved. Do international students have less eligible scholars than domestic? Again, we have international, you can't apply for OSAP if you're international, but on our website, there is a section for international students that we do have money for them, but it's not entrance, it's in course. So you already have to be a student. Is there a part of the OSAP app that allows you to put an address? Yes, I believe that you do have to put in your address. Yeah, you have to put in all your personal information about you, where your home is, and then what school you are, and then they know. I'm currently working full-time. Does that affect OSAP? It shouldn't. But again, it depends on how much money you make, right? They look at your student. If you're the student, they look at student assets. So, I mean, you'd have to be making a lot of money, but again, it shouldn't unless you're making a lot more money than Can you still apply to OSAP if your program is only 1 semester? Oh. Again, I would go on to the OSAP 8 estimator and see if you can find that program. If it's listed, again, remember, 99% of the programs are OSAP eligible, some are not.
Marco, if you want to check how much your courses cost, you can see all the cost of tuition on the georgebrown.ca website. It's all listed there very clearly, so you know how much you're going to be paying.